So I think I'm going to talk about what each plant is. I'm not going to remember the names of all, but I'll talk through them so that you get a better idea of what makes up this whole part. So I'll start with the smaller plants, and this one's called Birds of Paradise. And when I got all these plants, they were much smaller. So I feel like they've become, like the Monstera wasn't a giant plant when I got it. It was only 3 leaves in, and they've become giant with me. I think they know that I like giant stuff. But anyways, coming back to Birds of Paradise, I feel like even this leaf's gotten like really big, and the plant itself is becoming a bigger version. It was like really tiny when I got it, but when I first got it, the label on it said Birds of Paradise and orange. So I think the orange part is that when it flowers, it's gonna flower with orange flowers. So that is that plant. I'm super excited about how it's gonna grow, just because I know people who have a bigger version of this plant, and they can get huge. So I'm very happy about this one. Every plant that I chose is something that I felt intuitively called to have in my place when I was building my collection. So the next one is, I don't really know the name of this plant, but when I first got it, it looked very different. And actually what you see here is something that wasn't there when I first got it. It's a completely new shoot, and the shoot that was first there died, and then a new one came while this was still alive. A small part of it was coming out, and then this part looked very different. It looked like this, but it was red on the top. So I'm looking forward to how this one's going to turn out, if it's going to have any colors, and what the shoot is. Alrighty, so there was a time when I first got into plants. I love tropical plants, and I forget what this is called, but I just like the look of it. And I've also seen gigantic versions of these at the store, but at the time when I got it, it was just the smaller ones that were available. This is the second plant that I have of this variety. I first had another version of the same size, but it died, and that is because it started having like bugs. So there was a time that a few of my plants had bugs, and I chopped them off. So I chopped 2 off, and I chopped a third one off as well, but when it grew back, it still had the bugs. And I think that was a jasmine plant, so I threw it out. It just wasn't, it made me feel like it would disease all my plants, so the better option was to just get rid of it. So anyways, that is my story about the smaller plants. Now let's go behind, and what's directly behind this one is a Zezee plant. Now this plant as well has grown a lot. It's had a lot of shoots, and I think, let me just bring it down. Okay, so I brought this plant down, and the name of this plant is called Zezee, and it's grown quite tall, and it's had several new shoots the past few months, like this and this. And I'm trying to show you without dropping it down, but yeah, this is as tall as it goes. And I've seen huger varieties of this as well, and they're very low maintenance. How they look inside the soil is, I think it's part of the root system, but they look like potatoes. So quite interesting. Okay, then next is, so remember the smaller version of the Monstera that I spoke about, that I took apart, and there were 2 in there. Actually, it turns out to be there were 3 in there. So there's 2 in this, and 1 in this, or 2 in this, or maybe there were 4 in total, who knows. Anywho, So I repurposed glasses. Like, this was a pickle jar that I repurposed once we finished the pickles in them, and it was a huge glass jar, so pretty excited to use that as my plant jars. And this was a beer glass that we got at Oktoberfest that I repurposed into this. It was just sitting in the cabinet collecting dust, so what better use than to use this for plants. I love using glass for plants, or terracotta, which is this. So that's the Monstera, smaller version of it. And then come to this. When I first got this plant, it was just this long, and it was just like a straight shoot, and I forget what it's called, but I really liked plants at that time that were in the Monstera family or look similar to it. So you can see this kind of looks similar to it. It's probably from the family, but this is grown super tall. I'm just trying to show you how tall. So it goes all the way up there, all the way up there, all the way up there. And I try to use, the way I positioned all of them is I try to use each other as support, and put them next to each other so that they can thrive. But that is this plant. Now, we already spoke about this one, that this is the Monstera plant, the smaller version of it. And coming to the last two plants on this corner is the money tree. So this is the money tree, and it has around 3 stems. And when I first got them, they were like, say, 3 to 5 inches long or tall, and they were twisted. So let me just walk you through what they were. So they were like, they, you know, when you see them in the store, they come twisted, like they are plaited or they braided. What I found was I didn't like the way that they were bending, and I felt like they were being suffocated. So I took it apart one time. I was very brave, thought it would break, but it didn't. They're pretty resilient. And what I did was, just so that, because on their own, since they were growing taller, I didn't think that they would stand up on their own. So what I did was I took sticks and I used that as support, and I wanted them to grow away from each other just so that it's not crowded on top. And yeah, and then I put them apart here, so one is shorter than the other, and then there are 2 that are bigger, and then they go all the way up here. And it's turning out to be a gigantic plant too, and I feel like that leaf is like the biggest one. And then cut to the Monstera plant. So if you see some of my older shots or older videos, it wasn't this tall, but over the recent months it's grown really, really tall. And one of the newest shoots is this one, and I would say, even though it's new, it looks so dark green and it looks like a mature leaf. They mature really fast. And I would say the Monstera plant is very low maintenance as well. And it's pretty forgiving, is what I heard when I first got it. The guy at the plant store said that even if you forget watering them, they wouldn't be droopy or they wouldn't look sickly. But what I'm pretty up to date with my watering. When I water them all together, so that way I don't forget. But yeah, that's all of the plants in this corner, and I have more plants sprinkled all over the house, so I'll make a separate video on what the rest are. And I hope you enjoyed, and if there are any questions, drop them down in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.